Hello, we are back in the prelude. This is the world. When the son turns to the ego for help, this is how he pleads. You have got to do something and fast. I'm about to be annihilated and cast into oblivion. The ego confidently responds, have no fear. The solution is simple. Take my hand and we will disappear from the mind, projecting ourselves to make a world in which to hide so God will never find us. The son heartily agrees, and in an instant the thought of being separate from God, which gave rise to the belief in individuality, sin, guilt, and fear, and the battleground of our one or the other, is projected out. That is why looking at the box on the chart called World of Separation Perception, we find the same words as in the wrong-minded box. It must be so, despite what the ego says, because ideas leave not their source. And I'm going to pause here and pull up the print and the chart, and I will read to you while you look at the chart. So we're looking at the box on the chart called World of Separation Perception. We find the same words as in the wrong-minded box. It must be so despite what the ego says, because ideas leave not their source. In addition, as soon as the projection occurs, the ego causes a veil of forgetfulness or denial to fall across the mind, resulting in a complete lack of memory where we came from. We are aware only of where we have come to in both senses of the term. We have arrived in the world and have also come to trust our senses, coming to the awareness, this is who I am. We now find ourselves in a body ruled not by the mind, but by the brain. This difference between the brain and mind is essential to recognize, and we will be discussing it in much greater detail as our symphony unfolds. The brain is part of the body, yet the mind has nothing to do with it, for the mind is a thought that transcends the body entirely. The world then becomes the hiding place from our Creator, as described in the workbook. The world was made as an attack on God. Thus the world was meant to be a place in which God could enter not, and where His Son could be apart from Him. Once in the body, we forget how we got there, not recalling that the cause of the physical universe was the need to escape from God's wrath. The ego told us was the inevitable consequence of our sin and guilt. Restated the cause of the cosmos, in a sense, the cause of the thought that came before the Big Bang. All right, let me repeat that because I think I pronounced everything wrong. Restated the cause of the cosmos, in a big sense, the cause of the thought that came before the Big Bang, is the Son's belief that the ego is a better teacher than the Holy Spirit. That is the true cause, and the world is the effect. The thought of separation, the content, has now been buried in the mind, as was the Holy Spirit. In its place is the mindless world of form, in which the only understandable thing is what the ego programmed us to understand, in the same way as the only operations a computer can perform are what the computer programmer wrote in its program. A computer does not think on its own. It does only what the programmer told it to. And this is the case here as well. Our brains have been programmed by the belief in separation and the ensuing triad of sin, guilt, and fear. And now there is a body with the sensory apparatus to perceive a world outside the mind. The brain, a physical organ in the head, interprets the sensory data and makes sense of the perceptions. The ego's purpose is to keep us looking where the problem is not, away from the true problem of the mind's decision to choose the ego instead of the Holy Spirit. Back to the book. The world does not allow us to choose again, for it was born to keep the split mind hidden. Both the ego's and Holy Spirit's thought systems are concealed by the ego. There are therefore two levels of defense: the thoughts of sin, guilt, and fear, which defend against the right mind's atonement principle, and the world of sin, guilt, and fear, which defends against the wrong mind's thought system. The ego takes sin, guilt, and fear, pronounces them real, but transmutes them so they are perceived to be outside in another. Furthermore, because they are not perceived in us, sin is no longer our fault, and our fear is understandable and justified. Once more, everything in the chart's wrong-minded box finds its home in the world. Yet, because this is a world of multiple bodies, the dynamics appear to be different. Sin, guilt, and fear no longer exist in our minds, but in everyone else. The world then becomes the seeming witness to the fact that ideas leave their source. Of course, we started talking about the chart as soon as I took it down, but to compound the problem, integral to the ego's plan is that once we are born into the world as bodies, we are confronted with one problem after another, necessitating spending our lives attempting to resolve the body's problems, physically and psychologically. That is why brain and psyche are next to the body on the chart. As we go through our lives, no sooner do we solve one issue than another rises to take its place. And this cycle seems endless. However, at some point we say, there must be another way. Something is not working. Something is not right. There must be another teacher to give a different answer. This is the invitation to the Holy Spirit, and the reversal of the ego's downward spiral begins with that invitation to the miracle of forgiveness to heal. I hope that you are enjoying this. I love it because I feel like it simplifies the teaching for everyone. So I love this. And I hope that others find it beneficial. I've always been a big fan of Ken Wapnick, and I have no idea what people say about him. I try not to follow the drama online around the Course. I think to me it's about the material. And Ken Wapnick was very close to Helen Schucman, and I trust his interpretation because they were together for years. But other than that, I ask that you trust your own interpretation of A Course in Miracles and use what helps you, use what tools help you. But just know that it will unfold in its own time, and it does so beautifully and perfectly. And I love you. There's no rush. Time is an illusion. We already have everything we need. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you tomorrow.